I call to order the regular meeting of the West Sacramento Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commission for July 1st, 2019. We begin today's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, led today by Commissioner Zimmer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Zimmer. Item 1A on tonight's agenda for General Administration Function, Part 1, presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the Commission. Are there any items?
There are no items.
Seeing none, moving to item 1B, Commissioner Communications. Commissioners, are there any communications? Seeing none, moving on to the consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda for today, consideration of approval of the minutes of the April 1st, 2019 Commission meeting. Commissioners, is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it and the motion carries. Moving on to the regular agenda, item number 3, consideration of the I Street Bridge Replacement Project update.
Hello, Commissioners and Mr. Chair. Jason McCoy, Supervising Transportation Planner for Public Works. The item in front of you is an update on the I Street Bridge Replacement Project, and it's been brought to you because there have been a significant number of milestones that have been achieved for the project of late. In addition, we are looking to take this to the West Sacramento City Council on August 7th for consideration of the environmental document and the plans that are before you. I have a PowerPoint presentation to walk you through on this. The recommended action by staff is to receive this update. We're looking for a recommendation of approval of the environmental impact report, the preliminary plans, and we also recommend that the EIR and Commission comments be forwarded to the City Council for consideration at the August 7th meeting. In addition, we are looking for a recommendation to continue working with the City of Sacramento on the I Street Bridge deck conversion for active transportation project. That is the conversion of the top deck of the existing historic I Street Bridge to a bicycle and pedestrian facility. So just a little brief bit of background here. The Sacramento River Crossings Alternative Study that was concluded in 2011 looked at several river crossings between Sacramento and West Sacramento across the Sacramento River. Those were identified here in numbers between 1 and 8. Crossings such as the Sutterville crossing and a crossing in location number 1 were eliminated early on in the process. There are a couple other areas which include item number 7 here between Stone Lock and the City of Sacramento. That's actually moving forward for consideration in the West Broadway specific plan by the City of Sacramento. Those are, that location is identified as a bicycle pedestrian bridge crossing. In addition, could be a transit crossing in the future. But you can see those concepts moving forward in the City of Sacramento-led project there. For item number 5, that's also a City of Sacramento-led project, and that's the future pedestrian bridge between our street in Sacramento and the barn area and our waterfront in West Sacramento. As of right now, that's just a concept plan. There isn't anything that's moved forward that I've seen, but again, that is a Sacramento-led project. For our purposes, there are 2 bridge projects that are currently in process in the planning approval and environmental document phase. That is the I Street Bridge Replacement Project, which is identified as number 2 on this plan, and also the Broadway Bridge Project, which is identified as number 6 on this plan. As I said, both of those are moving forward. The I Street Bridge Replacement Project is a City of Sacramento-led project, whereas Broadway Bridge is a West Sacramento project. So here I've highlighted those areas. The North Market area is the I Street Bridge Replacement Project, and South Market is Broadway Bridge. The goals of these projects are shown here. Increasing economic development is a primary consideration. Improving the potential for planned urban development to make walking and biking easier across the river, facilitate connectivity, reduce vehicle delays, increase the waterfront access, and improve safety and emergency access. This bridge follows the neighborhood-friendly bridge policy that was developed by the City of Sacramento, and among those things, it looks to serve short local trips. It's going to serve all users, meaning bicycles, pedestrians, vehicles, transit. It's also intended to be a lower speed, low profile bridge. And there are also other concerns, including making sure that it is a bridge that does not go directly into a residential neighborhood, for instance, that it also be architecturally pleasing. If you look at the City of Sacramento's neighborhood-friendly bridge policy, which I believe I presented to this commission, I believe it's probably about a year ago now, perhaps a year and a half, it has a variety of different things that we were intending to follow with all of our bridges that cross the river. Here is a plan of the I Street Bridge Replacement Project. It also includes the map that shows the existing historic I Street Bridge. Those areas that are identified in red are shown here on the map, are the bridge approaches that are intended to come down with the I Street Bridge Replacement Project. The I Street Bridge received Highway Bridge Program funding, and that provides 80% of the cost of the bridge. It is a federal program. So in exchange for eliminating these additional approach bridges, we received funding, which is kind of a good swap for Caltrans because it's fewer bridge structures to maintain, reduces their cost. And as a result, we get to have a new bridge that serves all users. So as I mentioned, we've had a couple of milestones. One of them is that the environmental impact report was completed. Just a little bit of information here on an EIR, or environmental impact report. It provides for through the Environmental Quality Act, the ability for the public to review any potential impacts associated with a project and provide comments on that. Since this is a federally funded project, it also has to follow the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. So this document was prepared and identified a variety of different environmental impacts. It presented different alternatives and also provided the means to reduce or avoid significant impacts. So that draft EIR was circulated for public review and comment for 45 days. That was September 28th, 2017 through November 12th, 2017. This commission was notified when that process had been occurring. From that time, after the close of the environmental document, the comments were collected and responses were generated. Those responses were then published in a final EIR. That final EIR, as of the 25th of June, was approved and certified by the Sacramento City Council. This was at their latest meeting. At that meeting, they also approved the preliminary plans. Those are the same plans that are before you now, with no comments. Same with the EIR, no additional comments on that. They're going to be filing a notice of determination this month. As I said, it will be going to the West Sacramento City Council for consideration on August 7th. There is a change, though, from the staff report that I prepared that looked at October of having NEPA approval. We have been working with Caltrans, and to my delight, I found out today, as well as the City of Sacramento found out, that they adopted the NEPA document and certified the NEPA process at the same time that Sacramento approved the EIR. So we have now received federal and state environmental approval for the project. Now, for the purposes of the City of Sacramento, the lead agency is Sacramento. Our process is strictly just for the City of West Sacramento and for that portion of the project in our city jurisdiction. So what City Council is going to be doing is looking at the findings and recommendations of the EIR for just our jurisdiction. As far as the federal process is concerned, though, because the lead agency has approved the environmental document, the project is approved to move forward. So it's not so much a formality on our side, but it does mean that we have to look at the environmental impacts on our side, and the City Council has to concur with the findings of the EIR. And that will absolutely conclude the entire environmental process on both sides of the river. So as far as the bridge design goes, you did receive the 35% design in your packet. What I'm showing here are the cross sections of the existing historic bridge, that is the double-decker bridge with the railroad on the bottom, versus the proposed new bridge cross section. The physical parameters of the bridge itself were set by the U.S. Coast Guard. They require a navigational channel of 278 clear. That's to allow for larger barges and larger vessels to be able to navigate underneath the bridge between the abutments. There is a 56-foot opening height above the 200-year water surface elevation, which would require a movable bridge. So all the bridges crossing the Sacramento River, because that is navigable waters identified by the U.S. Coast Guard, have to allow for these larger vessels to go through. So there's two options, either a fixed bridge, which was eliminated early in the process due to the impacts on the communities on both sides of the river, or it needs to be a movable bridge as has been designed. This is going to be a vertical lift bridge, as I previously reported to the Commission, due to the large span that is required by U.S. Coast Guard. The towers are approximately 120 feet high, but that is not a limit. They could be slightly larger or higher. They could be slightly lower. It just depends on the design, which is currently in process, which I'll show you in the next few slides. There's also 12-foot pedestrian walkways on both sides of the bridge. That would be the north side and the south side of the span. This bridge connects two multi-use paths within two cities and two counties. So we worked with FHWA and Caltrans to ensure that we maintained 12-foot connections so that we could facilitate bike ped crossing and multi-use path use. Also, we designed this bridge to be transit friendly, so it will support streetcar in the future or light rail, either any rail project. It will support transit, and this bridge is also going to be including two travel lanes for vehicles, as well as on the bridge itself, another 6-foot bike lane with a 2-foot bike buffer on both sides. This bridge could also, in the future, if you actually look at the clear span in between the supports, it could be reconfigured in the future as a 4-lane bridge. That was purposefully done to give us maximum flexibility in the future in case we need to reconfigure the lanes for any reason. Our traffic modeling only goes out about 30 years or so, then it starts to get a little bit sketchy. Bridges last about 100+ years, so we can't see too far into the future. So we try to give ourselves as much flexibility as possible with the design. Also, finally, and this has also been reported to the Commission in the past, we did an international design competition to secure the architect for this bridge. Originally, we had Don McDonald Architects, who actually designed the Bay Bridge, as well as a few other notable bridges throughout the country. However, there was some outcry, I guess, by the public wanting to see a more international scale design competition, and we went through that process with Congresswoman Matsui, council members on both sides of the river participating on a selection panel, and ultimately bridge architects T.Y. Lin were selected to prepare the design for the project. So moving directly into the design, I'm sure a number of you had participated in the Community Outreach Workshop #1 for the I Street Bridge architectural design. That was held in Old Sacramento and was very well attended by several hundred people. There was also a design, by I think almost 300 people. And in addition to that, there were several hundred online that participated in a virtual community workshop for the project. There were 9 different bridge options that were brought forward for consideration by the public. And the public was asked to review the different concepts and provide their input. Moving forward, there is another public workshop, this time in Sacramento, over by the Ziggurat building on the waterfront. It's going to be an outdoor meeting. What has happened is that these concepts, which I'm about to run through with you very quickly, were refined per the comments that were received by the public on both the in-house and online workshops and reduced to 4 alternatives. But for right now, I wanted to show you the original concepts that were brought forward. So these include the triangle, which is more of the basic bridge type. The through, also more of the basic bridge type, but had some significant features that the public found interesting. In your packet, I included the outreach results so that you could compare what the public said on both the online virtual workshop to what was said and comments that were received in the in-house workshop. The fold represented the last of the Tier 1, which was the lower-priced bridge options. They went anywhere from $100 million all the way up to around $300 million. Those costs continue to be refined, and as we move forward through the process and start refining these different concepts down to hopefully just one concept, we will continue to seek some efficiencies in materials and reduce the costs as possible. The spring concept was kind of one of the middle of the roads and was introduced following a lot of discussion with our design ad hoc committee and our selection panel. The flutter concept. The garden concept, which, as you note in the packet that I provided for you, was one of the most well-received. This introduces actual garden or landscaping features on the bridge itself. The nest, which was representing a more futuristic aspect of the project. The flight. And finally, the solar arch. All of these concepts that I've shown you, as I said, have been further refined and will be reintroduced at the workshop coming up on July 10th. So this shows you the different ratings that were received by members of the public. Some of the top ones that were shown here included the garden concept, the spring, and the solar arch. That seems to have resonated with the public online as well as those attending the workshop. I did mention that community workshop number 2 is going to be occurring in West Sacramento. Here's the address, Riverwalk Park, 651 2nd Street. The participants will have an opportunity to review the results of the first workshop. However, those are also available online now, as well as on the city website. 4 refined concepts will be presented from the initial 9 bridge concepts that were introduced. There will be representatives from both cities, as well as the project design team, and will be available to answer any questions and take public comment on the designs that are shown. Specifically, what was asked at the first workshop was to identify those concepts in these different bridges that you really like, and also to vote on those bridges that you feel should move forward into the next phase. So now what we're asking the public to do is to look at these 4 concepts and specifically tell us what design elements you appreciate, what design elements you don't appreciate, and what's missing that you would really like to see. And what may move forward is either refined concepts once again, bringing forward maybe 2 different concepts that come forward, or there could be all new concepts based on the comments that we receive. We are extremely open in this phase of the design in order to try to reflect public opinion to the greatest extent possible. And the design process will conclude in the first quarter of 2020, and hopefully at that point we will have one concept that will be selected by the Bridge Design Selection Committee. This is the project schedule. Right now we are concluding the project approval and environmental document process. It will be closed out by the end of this year. We're looking at October to receive authorization from Caltrans to proceed with the right-of-way and final design phase of the project. Then we're going to be moving into construction. One of the questions that seems to come up often when we're talking about the new bridge is what's happening to the existing bridge. As I mentioned, we do have or had an ongoing project which was a feasibility study to analyze the top deck of the bridge and the bridge itself to make sure it's structurally sound and to recommend any alternatives for constructing new bridge approaches to the top deck and to look at different design concepts. We had an outreach event called that was the Lantern Festival. Some of you may have attended. It was attended by over 3,000 folks that came. Very well attended and very appreciated by folks. It gave everyone a new perspective on the bridge. A lot of people are scared to even go across that bridge, but when there's no vehicles on there, it allowed everybody to see Sacramento and West Sacramento through a different lens. It will also be a great vantage point for seeing the new bridge that will be constructed by 2023. And one of the next steps here that we're looking at for this project is the City of Sacramento in June 25th adopted a resolution to move forward with continuing to work with the City of Sacramento on this project. So what we're looking for from the Commission is also a nod to continue working on this. And if we also get that from City Council, then what we will do is work towards submitting an application in the next round of funding through SACOG's ATP program, the Active Transportation Program. And that concludes the presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them to the extent possible.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCoy. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Zimmer.
I just have a question. So I'm really excited about these projects, both of them. And I have a question about the existing bridge. I know that you guys are going to be removing lots of the approachways onto the bridge. And I go across this bridge often, and I can't help but notice that it leads right into Sacramento Valley Station. And so I was wondering if there had been any consideration as to whether that bridge, the top deck, might someday be used for, say, a light rail extension, and if that would affect the planning on the approach decks.
Well, the top deck, the way the bridge was designed was to have vehicles and, to a very small extent, pedestrians crossing the top deck. Mm-hmm. It was when it was designed back in 2011 and finished construction in 2012, it was great for a Ford Model T to cross. It was just the right width to have two of them. That wasn't that much consideration for pedestrians. However, it is not enough clearance for either transit vehicles like a bus, or definitely not for any light rail or streetcar. That's part of the reason why the rail is on the bottom and actually has a higher profile to allow those vehicles across. There has been some discussion about putting in a third rail to serve potential transit going between Roseville all the way to Davis. If that were to happen, it would require a new bridge in a different location because we would not be able to add on to this bridge. So right now, unless there is some kind of cooperative agreement with Union Pacific, we are limited only to freight rail and Capital Corridor operations on the bridge.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other comments from the Commission?
Just clarifying, what right-of-way, do you have control of just the right-of-way on the top portion, or I know it's owned by Union Pacific, is that correct? And what is the, just clarify how that agreement or negotiation will work out in the future.
Sure. So there's actually a few different agreements, I believe 1986, 1909. I want to speak to the 1909 agreement, I believe, that was developed that stated that this is obviously before West Sacramento was a city, but it did provide authority to, I believe it was Yolo County at the time, and the city of Sacramento to have authority over the maintenance of the upper deck of the bridge and allowed use of the bridge as long as, and this is a quote from that agreement, highway use is maintained. So back in the day, this was a highway crossing, and so it was primarily just for vehicles and, like I said, to a smaller extent, pedestrians. However, bicycles and pedestrian use does fit the early 1900 definition of highway use, thankfully. So what that means is, as long as we maintain use of the upper deck of the bridge, which is owned by Union Pacific, then we can continue using that upper deck. If we stop using that upper deck for any duration, I believe that's outside of regular maintenance activities or construction activities, then the cities vacate use of the bridge and give that right back up to Union Pacific, which means we no longer can use the bridge. So we are working very diligently to make sure that we have a project that is shovel ready to go, so that when those bridge approaches come down, the deck conversion for active transportation project will be able to kick in and start construction on the other side. So right now we're working with Sacramento to figure out what those bridge approaches look like. There is some discussion in Sacramento as to whether or not, I don't know if you've seen the concepts, I believe we presented that before the commission. There was a plaza concept in the Sacramento side which required using a larger portion of the existing bridge over the Union Pacific Railway, their right-of-way. However, we've received comments from a council member there that perhaps reducing that plaza down to the minimum feasible, I believe was the language, would be preferable. So we're working with Sacramento to figure out what it is that they want to see on their side of the river, and at the same time we're going to continue on our side of the river figuring out what the design is going to look like. That's going to actually take place in the next phase, the project approval and environmental document phase. So what we're looking to do is receive funding through a joint application with the city of Sacramento, and with that funding we'll continue to study different design concepts, and we'll be bringing those before the commission, as well as bringing them before the city of Sacramento advisory bodies and decision makers to come up with final design that works for everyone.
So under the current timeline, if construction of the I Street Bridge replacement is completed by fall 2023, will then you cease operation of the top portion of the existing I Street Bridge at that same time? What is it? Is there going to be any overlap, or is there any way that you can extend this timeline so that you can secure funding in order to get this underway?
Well, this is where it gets interesting. So in the environmental document, we are required to mitigate for the presence of the purple martin. So the purple martin is a species of bird that for some reason likes to live in the expansion joints underneath man-made structures adjacent to the water. So we have been working with the Audubon Society and other organizations to find appropriate mitigation to try to compel the purple martin to relocate to weep holes that we're planning to install in the new bridge and new bridge approaches. We've also installed bird boxes over in the Sacramento side in an effort to have the purple martin relocate out of the main structure and onto these into these boxes that would allow future construction or future demolition of the bridge without impacting the purple martin. The purple martin is a declining species, so it has not seen growth anytime recently, so we're keeping an eye on it. But as the mitigation sets forth, there's going to be a 2-year period between the bridge being constructed and bridge approach structures being demoed on the Sacramento side. Now, we don't have purple martin on the West Sacramento side. So our bridge approach can actually come down, and we could then construct a ramp to lead up there to the top deck of the bridge. Then after that 2-year period has ceased, then demo can resume on the Sacramento side, and then a new ramp can go up at that time. So we're hoping that this schedule that we're developing between the two projects will allow us to continue our use, and that way we're not vacating the use at all.
Other questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner Parker.
Yeah, on the new bridge, I know I appreciate the consideration for the transit and the future use. What in 2023, there's the likelihood that there's not going to be transit using that system yet. What would that lane be used for in that current state?
Well, right now it's designed as a median. So it's envisioning that transit is going to be using the regular travel lanes, because in 2023 we don't have streetcar or any other rail project coming forward. If a rail project were to move forward, say suddenly Sacramento or West Sacramento gets a windfall and we're able to extend light rail from rail yards into Washington District, say. Both of those areas, by the way, are planned for future rail. So, if we do come up with additional funding, it may be a possibility. If that were the case, then the transit could do one of two things. The rails could either be located in the center of the bridge, outside of the travelway, or we could locate tracks on both sides of the bridge in the right-hand lanes. So as a project moves forward, we've designed in maximum flexibility. So we could have a BRT, for instance, a bus rapid transit using the center lane that in case of congestion, it could just operate without being restricted by traffic. At this point in time, we're just trying to design something that has a lot of flexibility built in. So transit could go anywhere on this bridge.
Thank you. And on I appreciate the buffered 2-foot little gap you're giving for the bicycle lane. I know riding on Tower Bridge, that can be a fairly harrowing experience, and I guess it's not technically a bike lane. However, it's used that way. Is there any vertical delineators proposed for that buffer, or is that just a painted buffer?
At this point in time, it's just identified as a painted buffer. That's also going to be the same buffer that continues down C Street in West Sacramento. We've had some experience putting in buffered bike lanes through the city, and it seems to work out pretty well. We are looking at other projects like on West Capitol. I believe that we're looking at designing a potential for having vertical delineators up to try to enhance safety. Chris might be able to speak a little bit more to that if you have additional questions on that. But it's one of those situations where you look at the maintenance versus the actual function. We are providing 12-foot multi-use paths in addition to those buffered bike lanes. So the intent is that the buffered bike lanes will be used more by commuters and those who have a stronger, more confident riding style. And then the 12-foot paths could be used by kids, families, or those who have slower tendencies of riding. One of the options, the spring option, actually includes a third lane, and that is potentially for having I don't like using shared rideables as the term, but micro mobility is what we prefer. But that could potentially be used for scooters or whatnot. We will continue to design this bridge, and that is one of the things that people said they really like. So we'll see.
Can you give us any indication what are the 4 alternatives that will come out for that open house?
You have to come to the open house to see.
Great, thank you. My only other comment, sorry, I noticed in the packet that you sent out that there's also discussion around next phase funding. It sounds like there's been a few grant applications, at least up to this point, for the next phase of the replacement bridge, and it wasn't successful. Has there been any comments on what those, what is the missing piece for those applications?
We did get some comments. So this will be the 3rd build grant that we'll submit. We being Sacramento, I'm using the royal we there. So they are the lead agency on this, so they will be submitting the grants. In fact, they already submitted a grant for the 2020 call for projects for SACOG for the regional project funding. And then we've also prepared the build grant, which will be submitted, I want to say, in 2 weeks. The comments that we received before were that we didn't provide enough information on the historic bridge and the deck conversion. Since that time, we now have a feasibility study that we can point to and say, well, not only do we have the environmental approvals for this project, which we didn't have before when we had applied, now we have federal and state environmental clearance. On top of that, we have the feasibility study for the historic bridge, so we can provide a lot more information that way. And we can also say concrete that we have now FHWA, who delegates their authority to Caltrans, we have received that approval. So absolutely, this project will be moving forward. We've asked for $25 million from Build, and I believe we asked for $24 million through SACOG's regional ask. We are hoping that we'll be able to get at least a portion of each of those because we have about $25 million funding gap. That is if we don't have an overly elaborate bridge. So if the bridge design comes forward and the public is demanding something that exceeds our anticipated budget, we will work to, 1, meet public expectation by designing a bridge that meets people's needs, and 2, we'll continue to seek additional funding for the project. But it is our number 1 goal is to have a bridge built by 2023. So we're working really hard to kind of dance in that line there.
And the funds being looked at for both the replacement and the conversion, are those different pots of funding that you're looking for grants in? Different
pots of money. So like I said before, the Highway Bridge Program pays for 80%. We are looking through SACOG regional funding for the replacement bridge, and then we're looking through the Build grant application. For the deck conversion project, it would be the ATP, or Active Transportation Funding.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions or comments from the commission? I'll just close then with a few of my own. I want to thank the city staff for the excellent work that's been done on this project. I know that construction being finished in 2023, 4 years away from now, might seem far off to some, but I know in the big scheme of things, that's really exciting that it's that close to completion. I'm sure the last bridge that crossed the river, it's been over 50 years, so it's really needed to have an additional bridge crossing here in the community. And I think that speaks really well to the cooperation between the West Sac City staff and the Sacramento City staff and the Congresswoman's office. So it's really great to see everyone working in cooperation there. The only comment I had was for these community workshops. I think it's excellent to do both the in-person and the online workshops for the people who are unable to attend. So I hope that the workshop later this month is similarly successful. Are there any other workshops planned after the second one, or is this?
We have a total of 3 with plus a final presentation. So there will be a workshop number 3 that comes forward. We won't really know where that's going to be. It's probably going to be scheduled in Sacramento and possibly in the same location we were before. However, it was so successful the last time around, it was a little bit crowded. So we're going to probably try to find a larger venue. And there's going to be a lot more interest in that one because the third workshop is going to be showing probably, like I said, just 2 concepts, probably. I don't know yet. We'll see what happens with workshop number 2.
Are there any plans for city staff to come back to the TMI Commission to give an update, either between Community Workshop 2 and 3 or after Community Workshop 3? I
could definitely do that.
I think that'd be great, just to keep everyone, and I know there are some commissioners absent today, to keep us all informed. And the final comment I have is I think it's great to do a design that has a lot of flexibility in the capacity of the bridge. You know, Commissioner Zimmer's question about the I Street Bridge having capacity for rail, and you mentioning that it's a really outdated bridge and the bridge we're designing will hopefully last for a century. I think it's great to have multimodal capacities as well as the ability to reevaluate perhaps in a few decades if it needs to be changed one way or the other. So I think it's excellent work by the city staff on this. And unless there are any other questions or comments, I'll note that city staff's recommended action by the commission, I think, appears to be threefold. One, recommend approval of the EIR and preliminary plans for the I Street Bridge Replacement Project. 2, recommend the EIR and commission comments be forwarded to the City Council for consideration. And 3, recommend staff continue to coordinate development of the replacement bridge project in conjunction with the bridge deck conversion project. Is there a motion on that recommended action?
I motion to approve as is.
We have a motion from Vice Chair Chrisman Kaufman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Polhemus. All commissioners in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it and the motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on then to the General Administration Function Part 2 item of the agenda. Letter A, Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commission calendar. The next regular meeting of the commission is scheduled for Monday, September 9th, 2019. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Item B, reports from city staff. Are there any reports?
We do have a report today. I do want to note we will be putting on the calendar the I Street Bridge as noted. And the report that we have, the commission had previously identified the streetcar subject as something that the commission wanted to hear a report on. So Chris Doherty is here to actually provide a verbal report as we are kind of an interim stage in the project.
Good evening. Chris Doherty, Senior Analyst with the Public Works Department. Give you a brief background of streetcar, kind of as we have up to date. We began that project in 2004 with an MOU between all the different project partners, being the City of Sacramento, City of West Sacramento, Regional Transit, SACOG, and Yolo County Transit District. Throughout the years, we've secured several pots of money. In 2014, we secured $50 million of funding from the FTA. In 2016, we secured $30 million for in-state funding from the TIRCP program. We completed the environmental review for the streetcar in 2016, and in 2017, we formed a JPA to operate that streetcar. We completed design in 2018 and moved forward to release construction bids. We did that, and in early 2019, those bids came back, and they were significantly higher than anticipated, which made the project, as we had foreseen it, unfeasible at the time. So we have been tasked as the project team, which I've taken over recently, to go back and reevaluate the project and maybe identify if there's a lesser project we can build. But we've taken, a new lens, a new look at the streetcar project, and tried to identify if there are some other project that might meet the same goals. And those goals really are to link the two cities, to enable infill development, and to maintain the existing funding, and ideally be completed in the next 5 years. So a few concepts are floating around, but nothing at this point has been really locked down. No alignments have been decided on. We've looked at everything from extending light rail as a component over to West Sacramento. That was originally envisioned as part of the streetcar project, so it's just basically a smaller component of the streetcar project. We've also looked at what new and innovative mobility options are in this space and what could be done as a mobility service throughout the two cities. So we're stepping back and taking a look at those options now. And we hope to have that locked down the next 3 to 4 weeks, what direction we're going to go. And I'll be happy to provide a far more extensive and more information and update in the September meeting.
Thank you for the update. I'd love to see it when it's prepared. Commissioners, any comments about that update from Mr. Doherty? And any other reports from city staff?
No additional reports.
Moving on then to item C, future agenda item requests by the commission. Commissioners, are there any future agenda item requests?
I'm not sure if it's worthy of an agenda item request, maybe just a update on the activity occurring south of Mill Street Pier. There's a crane out there, and I'm just curious what that activity is that's occurring there.
I believe that the activity that's happening out there is related to the construction of the residential units over in the Bridge District. But I will look into that and I'll try to get more information.
I believe I can speak to that too. There is currently a crane on a barge tied up in the river. Caltrans is doing some maintenance work on the Pioneer Bridge, the 50/80 freeway. And also they had used that. There was that tow truck accident that had happened a few months ago, and they had used that to remove that vehicle from the water as well. But it's been tied up there, and we'll be there for the next few months just doing basic maintenance and review of the Pioneer Bridge.
I think it's an excellent question. I had the same question driving down that area. Commissioner Zimmer.
I have a request as well. If it's appropriate, I'd like to know more about the California Indian Heritage Center north of the Broderick Boat Ramp, and in particular, how, if there are bicycle and pedestrian paths that may connect the Broderick Boat area ramp, that area to the areas to the north, the rivers, and to the paths that lead beyond there along the river.
I'll work to identify who's going to do that update for you. It's probably one of our folks from the city manager's office.
Okay, thank you.
Other requests?
Yeah, sorry. I think City Council recently passed an agreement with a consultant to start the Mobility Action Plan. I'd love to, whenever there's some framework, what's being proposed, what's being looked at, for that to come back to the commission for our discussion. That would be really great to hear.
Just a note of clarification, are you looking for, we did recently hire a consultant on that, that's WSP. Are you looking for information on the scope of work or additional, like what our next steps are, or all of the above?
I think probably all of the above,
Okay.
Understanding what the scope of what the consultant is looking at and what the next steps of that project looks like and timeline would be great.
Okay, great.
Any other future agenda item requests? In that case, I'll add 2 more to the list. Back in January, we had an update about the West Capitol Avenue road rehabilitation and safety enhancement project. Now it's summer of 2019, and our next meeting will be in September. So I'd love to get an update by September about how that project's progressed.
Okay.
And then the second request I have, I peruse our West Sac Community Discussion Board Facebook group from time to time, and I know that one of the most popular topics, not just in our city, but in all cities, I'm sure, is potholes. So I was wondering if city staff could give a report about our wonderful West Sac Connect app and maybe show some data about how often it's used to report potholes and how often potholes are addressed and how quickly they're addressed when comments are put in through the West Sac Connect app.
I'll have to look into it whether or not we can get down to specific data such as they've requested potholes. We do get requests for road maintenance on a regular basis I believe we can pull out, but it wouldn't specifically identify potholes. But I can pull what data that I have, and then we can provide a presentation for you.
Yeah, I'd really appreciate that. And I think road maintenance captures the overall public issue as well. So whatever data is available, I'd love to see it.
Okay.
In that case, if there are no other future agenda item requests, moving on to item D, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion by Commissioner Parker. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Commissioner Love. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.